Hello once again, this is Ngobani Zondo again. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On a previous video, we're speaking about the economics of Zimbabwe, about the current money crisis, and I was saying in the video that it is, I believe that it is a created crisis. It's not a natural happenstance. It's something that people sat down and decided that one way of looting the financial valuations of the people of the country is to create a financial crisis of this nature, so that we'll be able to sell cash. And I also say that partly it's also because the government ran a financial deficit, and the government had no place to borrow money from, so the only way that the government would have cash would be to print cash. But because the government wanted to print cash, at the same time they didn't want the people to know that they were printing cash. So one way of doing it was creating this thing called RTGS balances, whereby the government began to inject money into RTGS balances. What that means is that the government just injected money into your account. What it means, they just created money. They just out of thin air, money appears into your account. That is called money printing, and that is inflationary. That is caused like inflation of Zimbabwe. But after doing that, after injecting electronic money into people's accounts, the Reserve Bank did not, as it should have done, did not manufacture hard cash or paper currency to go in line with the electronic money that had been printed by the government. Because I just want to clarify the word printing. The word printing is confusing to a lot of people, because when we talk of printing, people think of a printing machine, a machine that prints. So when we talk about the Reserve Bank printing notes, you are thinking that it is with the same meaning as when we say the government printing money. When we talk about the government printing money, we're not really talking about an actual printing machine. We are talking about the government declaring money into existence. So when the government was paying its supplies in the country using RTGS balances, the government was just declaring money. There was no money. They did not have that money. They just wake up in the morning and say, we want $2 million for this thing. So and so must supply us for $2 million. So and so must do certain service. We're gonna pay them $2 million, and they don't have $2 million. What they do is that they just instruct the bank to add $2 million into that person's account. In that person's account, there's going to be $2 million. It will reflect, and they would call that $2 million an RTGS balance. And the act of doing that is called money printing. There is no machine involved in doing it. It's just government declaring it. And when the government does that, they're doing it through the Reserve Bank. The government in itself, cannot tell a bank to do so. They cannot tell CBZ, for example, to do so. What the government does, that it will transfer its money from its own bank account with the Reserve Bank. It will go, let's say, for example, to a CBZ account of whoever the government is intending to pay that $2 million, right? That is just an example. Okay. So now, since the government banks with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, now the question is, where does the government take that $2 million from? The government in itself, hear me correctly, in itself, it does not create $2 million from thin air. The only people who have the authority and power to create money is the Reserve Bank. So what the government does, it goes to the Reserve Bank and borrows the $2 million. The Reserve Bank is the entity that creates the money out of thin air on behalf of the government, then deposits it to that RBZ, to that CBZ account for the person that the government is interested in funding. So when I say that the government printed money, the government creates money out of thin air, but what I'm really saying that it uses its proxies, which is the Reserve Bank, to do that. Okay, so let's just get that clear. okay, that the RBZ does the creation of money, and when that money is created through balances, through RTGS balances, that is called money printing. Okay, there is no printing machine that is got coloring and paper involved. No. Okay, now the other aspects of printing is using the actual machine and printing the actual currency with denominations $1, $2, $5, $10, $20. That printing itself is not money printing. When we're speaking about inflationary money printing, that is just got nothing to do with it. It's just a confusion of words. You know, the English language is very confusing, by the way. So I don't want people to be confused with that. So that part of doing it, of the Reserve Bank, actually using a mint to mint out money, that part has got nothing to do with the phrase that says printing money is inflationary. So now when the government created those RTGS balances, they had already printed the money into the system. So there was more money chasing fewer goods. So because there was more money chasing fewer goods, now the price of goods tends to go up. That is inflation. So inflation was created. So because the government could still not find ways of balancing its books or other places of getting funding, they kept on printing money through the system of adding money to the RTGS balances. Because of doing that, hyperinflation came into being. Okay. Hyperinflation came into being because of that. That is a separate issue. And there is a real issue that we have to deal with. It's a second issue. That one is the first issue that we'll deal with it on its own. But the second issue, which is troublesome, which should not have happened, is that the Reserve Bank, okay, is mandated. The Reserve Bank is mandated to provide the notes, the bank notes, as required by the banking public. So let's just say the banking public has deposits of $1 billion. It's just an example. Obviously, it's more. Let's just say there's $1 billion that the country has deposited. The Reserve Bank is mandated by the Constitution of Zimbabwe to provide the $1 billion cash needed by the people. In normal countries, the Reserve Bank does not need to print $1 billion equivalent, because in any case there's no demand for the cash, for the paper currency. So they will only print according to the demand. So in proper countries, you will never hear that the bank ran out of notes. Their Reserve Bank will print enough notes needed. So what happened with our country is problem number 2. The Reserve Bank did not print the notes that were required by the people. And our parliament, surprisingly, is not pushing along that direction. If they are, it's not enough, because there is the biggest robbery that has ever been committed to a nation. When the Reserve Bank fails to do its mandate and fails to print the papers that are required, there is no shortage of paper in the world. Okay, there is no shortage of anything, because if they say that they can't afford to print, well, what is the cost of printing one $5 bond? Instead of printing 5, why don't you print $100 bond note? Well, you would have increased the money, the supply of notes 20-fold by just changing 5 to 200 to 200 to 500. After all, this value, this money is now 1:30, which is just 1:30 to the US dollar. So it makes sense to print even 1,000 Zim dollars as a note. So you will not have problems with that. So now the problem is, why did the Reserve Bank not do that? Now the Reserve Bank did not do that because people that were corrupt did not want to happen. People that are corrupt wanted to create these shortages so that the legally that they print, they'll be able to bring it to the streets and sell it at a premium, such that at the end of the day, everybody who had their money in the bank, they would lose 33% of their valuation. If you're going to pay 50% premium to your money, then it means that you're losing 33%. That is, for example, you are going to pay 150 RTGS to get $100 hard cash, which means you're only getting 66% of your money. You have lost 33% just by changing the money from RTGS to cash. Now, there was no need to lose that 33%. Why should you lose that 33% when the Reserve Bank itself was supposed to print the paper? So I do not know why the country is not having that discussion at fever pitch high. That is a discussion that we must be having. Those are the questions that we must be asking the Reserve Bank and telling Ngobe why they did not print all along. And the lie that I'm hearing around is that they did not print because they were afraid of hyperinflation, which is a lie. The hyperinflation was caused by the monetary expansion that came to be because the government deposited the government created new RTGS balances. That was inflationary already. Therefore, printing the complementary banknotes is not inflationary. It's prudence. It's good for the economy. It's what is going to make the system well oiled. But not printing it is creating problems that are not supposed to be there in the first place. It's creating a problem whereby the cash barons, those people that have got access to the Reserve Bank, they take money in the Reserve Bank and then they sell money in the streets, thereby charging every Zimbabwean a premium of 50% on their bank balances. That is stealing, really. It's a manufactured crisis of stealing. This is a bank robbery. I call it a bank robbery. It's a haste committed by a few people to millions of people and companies, and people don't even understand what's going on. Because if people knew what was going on, people would have been demonstrating a long time ago, requesting the Reserve Bank to print the papers. But no one was asking the Reserve Bank to print the papers, which means that people themselves as a whole, I'm sure that people who knew, but generally the general public was not rallied around this idea, because the general public was of the understanding that there is money shortages. You can't be short of paper. It's like it's like going to school, writing an examinations, and then they don't give you reports because there's the paper shortages. But you just wrote an examination, you spent like maybe 70 pieces of paper for the examinations, but they can't provide one piece of paper for your report. It doesn't make sense. It's a lie. There's nothing like there's no paper. The paper is there. What is not there is the willingness to print the paper. Even now with the new Zim dollar, there is paper. They need to print as much as required. Parliament must push the Reserve Bank to do that. They must push the government to print as much money as required, so that there will be no more problems of people selling cash. And with the new currency, and then on the social media we see cash already out in the streets, and the Reserve Bank saying that there are some people apparently who are exempt, who are allowed to withdraw above the daily limit, and the Reserve Bank is going to pursue criminal whatnots on people who are posting these things. I mean, the criminals is the Reserve Bank. The criminals are the people who are not doing their constitutional mandate of providing the cash. If the Reserve Bank prints as much as needed. Okay, if any bank manager, right, or let's just say if all the bank managers were to collude and say, even though the Reserve Bank gave us enough money, we are going to go to the streets and do what, and sell the cash. The Reserve Bank also has got its own ATMs, right? Then the Reserve Bank will have cash in its ATM, so that if you are banking with this bank of yours and the bank and your ATM doesn't have money, you can go to the Reserve Bank's ATM and also withdraw your money from your own bank. So they will close the loophole. That is how they can close the loophole. The Reserve Bank has to print as much money as possible and give to the banks as much money as possible. All banks must give out money, no limits, and all ATMs must be able to give people across the banking sector money, so there'll be no one who'll be selling money in the street, because there'll be no market for it. There'll be no value. It will have no value because the Reserve Bank has already made it available. That is the only way that we can solve this problem. Otherwise, there is no policing something that is scarce. If a commodity is scarce, a black market is going to be created, and it will be very difficult to nip a black market. A black market, especially in a country like Zimbabwe, where the people who start the black markets are the ones that are already in power, are the ones that are powerful themselves. So we're just wasting our time. If the Reserve Bank, if John Mankundla is very, very serious about this thing, he will do what he's supposed to do. He knows that. He's an economist. He knows. He's an economist. He knows what I'm saying is true. But because that they don't want to, they just want to keep on stealing the valuations of the people of Zimbabwe, they will keep on coming up with excuses. There's no inflation, there's no hyperinflation that is going to be caused by money being available. Okay, because from where would be the hyperinflation coming from? What do you mean that because there will be more money available that wasn't available before? Money is available. The RTGS balances are being used by the people every day, but when they use them, people lose 33% in valuation. That's all. But people still use their money. But as they are using their money, they're paying a premium. So there's nothing like there's going to be hyperinflation. There'll be no hyperinflation because we're not talking about monetary expansion. So that is what's going to happen. That's what is going to happen for us to get out of this cash shortage situation. But then going back to the original problem of hyperinflation that is caused by the monetary expansion through the government injecting money into the RTGS balances, that problem is a problem that can only be solved if the government becomes sincere and tells the investing public that we are printing cash. Okay, and then find ways of balancing the budget. On my next video, I'm gonna talk specifically about how that problem, the government can solve that problem. Really, from my own opinion. Okay, I'm not the government, but I've got some ideas of how we can solve this problem. Okay, thank you very much for watching. You can leave a comment below. You can subscribe to the channel. You can share the videos with other people. This is a very new channel. As you can see, we don't have much followers, or don't have much likes, or much of a conversation going on. So yeah, I'll be happy that we can get this dialogue going on, because this is a very important thing that we should be talking about right now as a nation. Have a good day.